The baseball gods give and the baseball gods take away. And last night, LSU baseball's postseason luck ran out as LSU's season ends early and ends in a Chapel Hill regional after falling to the Tar Heels 4-3 on Monday night.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, y'all? Welcome into Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube included. So give us a subscribe on YouTube, like, rate, review, all those great things. Just always appreciate you for being here and always making us your first listen every single day. Well, let's get into it because LSU's baseball season is over after falling in the Chapel Hill Regional Final 4-3 against the UNC Tar Heels. Last night sucked. It did. And it was fun while it lasted. It was. LSU leading 3-2 for the majority of the game going into the ninth inning. And they just couldn't hold on. A team that seemed to be playing their best baseball in the postseason in the last 2 innings of the game, where it got to the point where it was, it's the first 5 innings. That's a different team that just all of a sudden, would come alive late in games, whether it was walk-offs from Stephen Milam, and I say walk-offs plural because there were several walk-offs from Stephen Milam, or whether it was just late game heroics defensively at the plate, whatever it might have been. LSU always they seem to, since Hoover, get that perfect stroke of luck. Seem to get that timely hit at the perfect time. Seem to at least eliminate enough defensive mistakes to not shoot themselves in the foot. But that ran out on Monday night. So I do want to get into kind of like a reflection of the season as a whole, kind of my feelings, where I'm at right now. And some might be conflicting, but even although they're conflicting, I do think it's fair to feel, multiple things at once. So we'll get into kind of just a recap of the season as a whole, just where my feelings are at. But first, I want to touch on some of the key points in the game last night. Let's start in the ninth inning when things really started to unravel. You just couldn't hold on. Gage Jump comes in relief of Nate Ackenhausen. Nate Ackenhausen, who was throwing it well. Retired a couple of batters. Gage Jump comes in up 3-2 in the ninth. And all you're asking Gage Jump to do, your ace, the guy that we have all, Jay Johnson included, grown to trust the most in that bullpen, he was asked to come in a gotta-have-it moment to hold on, to get at least 3 more outs, in this case 6 when LSU ended up going into extras. 3 outs, that's all we're asking you to do. And I understand when I say that's all we're asking you to do. It's a lot easier said than done. But that's the responsibility of an ace. I know there was a lot of discourse on social media last night, and I saw it, and I thought about it. Because I think it's really easy for us as fans to second guess, to grade the outcome of a situation, or rather grade the decision after we've seen the outcome of a situation play out. It's easy to do that, right? Hindsight is 20/20. Somebody makes a decision, the decision doesn't work out. Well, it's easy for me to say, well, that wasn't a good decision. I agreed with Jay Johnson's decision to put Gage Jump in because he's your ace. And at that point in time, when you're entrusting the guy that you trust the most to get 3 outs, that's exactly what you have to do, is get the guy that you trust the most. The one thing that I thought about was, okay, if Gage Jump comes in here, just a couple of days removed from over 100 pitches, is he going to be able to go in game 1 of a super regional? But then I thought, okay, you can't right now, with the position that Jay Johnson is in, he can't be thinking about a super regional. He has to be thinking about winning this game right now. Who gives us the best chance to win on the mound? And if you're telling me Nate Ackenhausen is, and that's no disrespect to Nate Ackenhausen, but if you're telling me that you thought in that moment you trusted Nate Ackenhausen over Gage Jump to finish the job, I think you're kind of kidding yourself. It didn't work. But just because it didn't work doesn't mean that it was the wrong decision. And vice versa. Just because something worked doesn't mean that it was the right one. So I understand that that's going to be something that LSU fans discuss and debate and go back and forth on. But what I want you to ask yourself, if you were in the camp of why would you bring Gage Jump in, ask yourself, who do you trust the most? Because I trust Gage Jump the most. Because he's given us every reason to trust him the most. Gage Jump comes in, and obviously it wasn't the right move. He gives up 3 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, and that's what cost you the game. And it wasn't just Gage Jump. Of course, you had a Jake Brown, misline drive into right field. And Jay Johnson even said it after the game. If he catches that, that's out 3. We head back to the dugout, and we live to die another day. Instead, you stay out on the field and you continue to give North Carolina momentum. In that 9th inning, you had everything in your corner. All you had to do was hold on. But the momentum very quickly shifted to North Carolina's side. But it wasn't just Gage Jump. I can't pin this loss on just him alone. Also, weren't good enough at the plate. Only 3 runs and 5 hits. Stephen Milam, who you've relied so much on in the past season, went 0 for 5 and struck out twice. Michael Braswell, who has really emerged as the leadoff hitter, who has looked so much better in the latter half, even like the latter 20% of the season than he did the rest of the season. He went over 3. Travinsky, your DH, hasn't been good enough really for majority of the postseason, really majority of all season long. He only had a hit, struck out once. What LSU needed was that one key hit late in the game to keep momentum on their side, to keep putting pressure on North Carolina's bullpen, and to give yourself a couple of more insurance runs. Because I know we were all sitting on our couches, or if you were lucky enough to be in Chapel Hill, wherever you were watching on the edge of your seat with your heart bursting through your chest and the beads of sweat starting to form on your forehead and your fingernails whittled down to nubs because you were so nervous. Would have been nice to have a couple of insurance runs or 2. So you missed that key hit late. You had a dinger from Bear Jones. Jake Brown had a home run of his own. But you went innings 4 through 10, obviously went to extras last night, scoreless. In a regional situation, when it is winner take all, loser go home, you got to do a little bit more for yourself at the plate. And then I don't think that we can talk about this game without talking about Will Helmers and how gutsy of a performance he had on Monday night. Will Helmers has had a really rough go at it. Injury after injury that's kept him off the field, that's kept him on the bench. I'm sure it's frustrating. But everything that I've heard from anyone who's spent any portion of time in that locker room knows how important Will Helmers is to kind of the DNA and the heartbeat of that dugout and of that locker room. That Will Helmers very much so is a leader within that building, even if he isn't able to contribute on the field. And Will Helmers wasn't on the roster in Omaha. But even still, I mentioned Jay Johnson's post-game press conference earlier. He mentioned Will Helmers. Look, he's everything that you could ask for. And a teammate and a competitor just couldn't stay healthy. Your best ability is your availability. But Will Helmers, after going there at the season with not a ton of appearances on the mound, longest was 33 pitches? He went out and he pitched you 5.2 scoreless innings. 5.2, gave up only 2 hits, 0 runs, shut him out, 4 strikeouts. And it wasn't just the strikeouts. Will Helmers was responsible for double-digit outs against North Carolina. What a gutsy performance from Will Helmers. And you hate to see the outcome of the game be that way. That you get the kind of performance that you got from him. You had a lead going into the 9th inning with your ace on the mound and you're not able to close it out. In terms of individual performances, I don't think you could have scripted anything better for Will Helmers. But in terms of a team performance, in terms of outcome, it's a shame that it had to come down to that. So coming up next, I want to get into just kind of my overall thoughts on the season as a whole, the postseason, not just the game, but really just let's take a 360-foot view of the season so far. We'll get into that coming up next here on Locked On LSU. Okay, I want to tell you about I want to tell you about LinkedIn. There we go. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. The radio station that I work for, we were searching everywhere, high and low, for a producer after one of our producers left in the middle of football season. So super busy time at the radio, at a sports talk radio station right in the middle of college football and NFL season. So we went to LinkedIn Jobs because we didn't have a massive budget. LinkedIn Jobs is for free because we just didn't have a ton of time to go out and vet all of these candidates. But the great thing about LinkedIn is that it's not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, and even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but could be open for the perfect role. So in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, then you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make your process easier. They even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Because if you've been there, if you've written a job description, you know it's just kind of a pain. So shout out to LinkedIn for making small businesses' jobs easier, for searching for that perfect candidate. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. All right, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of the screaming. I'm having some technical issues today. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. Okay, let's look back on this season. And I think that it's easy to get caught up in kind of the magic that we felt in the postseason. I feel a lot of different ways. I'm feeling all types of ways about this season as a whole. Overall, I'm disappointed with the outcome. I'm disappointed with the outcome because this is LSU. I talked about this on the podcast yesterday when I was talking about kind of football expectations. I said it's okay to expect a national championship from Brian Kelly at some point in his tenure. I don't know if it comes this upcoming season. I don't know if it comes in 3 years. I don't know if it comes in 8 years. But it is okay to expect a national championship from the coach that you were paying $10 million for. Because your last 3 coaches have won national championships at LSU. It is okay to have high expectations for a baseball program that is a perennial contender, that puts a heck of a lot of money and fan investment into it. It's okay to expect a lot from a program that has achieved a lot and has really high expectations. I don't care what the regular season looked like. Losing in a regional, that's not LSU standards. But I'm also disappointed with the process. I'm disappointed that at one point in time, through the first half of SEC play, LSU was 3-12 in SEC play. I'm disappointed that they had so much talent on this roster. So much talent on this roster. Whether it was young talent or talent that returned after the national championship season, Hayden Travinski, Alex Milazzo, Tommy White, you know who I'm talking about. Whether it's the talented transfer portal players that were brought in that didn't really give you a whole lot, or did give you a whole lot. In Luke Holman's case, he just didn't really get anything around him. Like, it's okay to be disappointed in that. That was disappointing. But at the same time, I was so impressed with the turnaround. That LSU started 3-12 in the first half of conference play, and in the second half, they were 10-15. Including a series win over the then number 1 team in the country, Texas A&M, who, oh yeah, by the way, swept their regional and is headed to a super. And I think probably will find themselves in Omaha. I understand the rest of those wins came against Auburn or Missouri or Ole Miss, but LSU needed to sweep Ole Miss to get to that 13 win mark in conference play. They needed to sweep Ole Miss to do that, to get to that threshold. Well, they did. They needed to win at least to one game, if not a couple of games in Hoover. And guess what? They did. And they found themselves in the conference tournament final. So I think you have to be so impressed with the turnaround that this team made. They figured things out. They figured out what worked. When it could have been so easy for them to say, screw this. This is not what I signed up for. I did not sign up for a national championship hangover. I don't care. There could have been a lot of buy out. They didn't. And that's credit to Jay Johnson. Credit to that entire coaching staff and credit to that team for all being bought into the turnaround. But I'm disappointed with the outcome in the process, but really impressed with the turnaround. I also had a really fun time watching this team in the postseason. I don't care if you're an LSU fan or not. You can't tell me that you didn't have fun watching this team. Whether it is what they did in Hoover, that wild 11-10 game against South Carolina, whether it was the walk-off against Wofford on Friday afternoon in the Chapel Hill Regional, whether it was taking down Wofford on Sunday morning and then turning around with a doubleheader and taking down UNC to force a winner-take-all game. Like, that was really fun. And in the postseason, LSU started to look like one of the better teams in the country. Was I going to say that LSU was all of a sudden a title contender? No. But you could make an argument that, let's say, if Jake Brown makes that catch in right field, you're able to make a little bit more contact against North Carolina on Monday night, then you're headed to a super. Hell, you could have even hosted a super. And against West Virginia, frankly, I don't really know much about West Virginia's baseball program. You don't have to tell me about it. I would feel good about LSU's odds. With the way that they're playing, why not? Why not? So I'm disappointed in what could have been. I had a lot of fun with what was. I'm encouraged with the young core. Disappointed that so many talented players that either won't come back or could declare for the NFL draft could potentially finish up their LSU careers on this note. So that's what I'm going to get into coming up next is where does this roster stand? Who will return? Who could leave? Let's get into that coming up next. Just a little of a 2025 season prepper. And we'll get into that coming, which weird. That feels very weird saying 2025. It's going to be a long few months before LSU baseball next season. And it is a big fat bummer that it's June 4th. And we're talking about next season. That's a bummer. But we'll get into that coming up next after just a couple of words from our sponsors. All right, I want to tell you about FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a win of your own. That's right. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. I mean, who wouldn't want to get that from FanDuel? That's right, $150. You can bet on spreads, you can bet on money lines, you can bet on player props, and so much more. I know that the NBA and NHL playoffs are going on, and those have been an absolute blast, but there's been a whole lot of talk about the WNBA recently. So let's look at some prop bets on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. That might be a name that you are familiar with. Tonight, the New York Liberty head to Chicago to take on Camila Cardoso and Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. Right now, Angel Reese's over-under point total is set at 10. I'm going to take the over there. I am going to take the over there for Angel Reese, 10 points, but that's my take. Do it how you want to do it. Just do it with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Thanks again for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. All right, let's take a look at the roster where it stands right now. I mentioned I was really encouraged about the young core. Stephen Milam, obviously. It was so wild, the stat after the walk-off against Wofford. Stat was Stephen Milam home runs throughout the regular season, 4. Stephen Milam home runs in the postseason, 4. So that's really fun and that's really encouraging. And just the attitude, the swagger that Stephen Milam comes with, like it is like he feels like LSU baseball personified. Feel really excited about Jake Brown. And I know everyone's going to dog on Jake Brown for the ball that he could have caught in right field that could have ended the game or at least kept LSU alive against North Carolina, and he didn't. And that stinks. Yeah, I can't be how Jake Brown gets remembered for this past season because let's not forget how clutch Jake Brown was in the postseason at the plate. He had a home run on Monday, had a home run earlier in the postseason. So I'm encouraged about him, and I think that he's going to be a really good player for LSU moving forward. Ashton Larson, who got a ton of experience defensively, was contributed offensively all season long. So these are guys that didn't just show progress and show development throughout the season, but they also got postseason experience. They got big time, big game, gotta have it game experience. And I think it's tough to recreate for a freshman. That you don't really get the postseason vibe. You don't really get the postseason expectations until you experience it. So you've got a ton of young players that were able to play big starting roles in big time games. So that makes me excited. Now, some question marks that I have. The first question mark that I have about players that could come back, that could declare for the NFL for the Major League Baseball draft, Jared Jones is the number one. Because if Jared Jones comes back, that at least makes you feel encouraged that you've got a big time hitter, big time power hitter returning in the lineup next year. Now, I don't know what the evaluation of Jared Jones would be on the Major League Baseball level. I don't think that Jared Jones would be a projected, first round pick. So maybe that weighs into his decision. Maybe Jared Jones looks at it and says, I got some unfinished business after last season. Griffin Herring, another one who has been LSU's go-to coming out of the bullpen, has been so incredibly clutch. We talked about earlier in the show how I trust Gage Jump more than anyone in a gotta have it moment. Well, it's not Gage Jump, it's probably going to be Griffin Herring for how clutch he's been, how money and nails he's been in relief all season long. Paxton Kling is another one that, could move on, could come back. Look, Paxton Kling's a really, really talented outfielder. But when LSU was down 4-3, 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth, and Paxton Kling was up to bat, I thought, well, here we go. Extras. That's not the only time I've had that feeling with Paxton Kling at the plate. So if he comes back, great. If he doesn't come back, he seems to me like a replaceable guy on your roster. And look, though, it's the truth. That's the truth. Also some news, Micah Bucknam, LSU reliever, has announced on Tuesday afternoon that he intends to transfer. He appeared in 8 games this past season, threw 10 strikeouts, a 7 ERA on the season. It's natural attrition, unfortunately, this time of year, that once you get bounced, once you look at the players that are coming in, the players that are getting healthy. Keep in mind, Chase Shores was one of the top recruits in the country, one of the best pitchers in the country. Chase Shores got Tommy John this past year. This past year. That bullpen might just be getting a little bit too crowded. And if Griffin Herring decides to come back, does Griffin Herring start to get into the rotation as a starter? So unfortunately, you hate to see guys go, especially incredibly talented guys. It's natural attrition. You're going to see guys leave because you also need to bring guys in as well. I fully expect Jay Johnson to supplement this roster via the transfer portal in the offseason. But just a couple of names that I'm keeping an eye on. I think Jared Jones and Griffin Herring are the top 2 that I'm going to look at and think, okay, what's your draft stock what's the benefit of coming back to LSU? Weird season. It was fun sometimes. It was not very fun sometimes. But in Jay Johnson's post-game press conference, I think you saw how much this team means to him, how much the season meant to him. He was teary-eyed talking about how much all of these guys mean to him, how he'll always remember this season. So while the outcome wasn't nearly what we wanted, while the exit was earlier than I think we all could have anticipated or all wanted, at least at the beginning of the season, it was a roller coaster of a season. And now it's, what are you going to do to not just get back and replace the pieces that you're going to lose this offseason? It's, how are you going to get better? How are you going to get back to being a contender in the SEC? Because that's not what you were this season, no matter how fun this ride was in the postseason. But I will say this, I trust Jay Johnson to do it. I will wholeheartedly trust Jay Johnson to do it. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Mailbag Wednesday coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU. So get those questions in, comment them below on YouTube, send them in on Twitter at CarolineFinton1. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find my Twitter handle right below me. So send those questions in. We will get right to those on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.